Hello, welcome. For those that don't know me, I'm Annie Taylor and I head up the Isle of Man Borders, which is Travel Notification, Passport, Immigration, Nationality Services. And with me is Amy Swales, who heads up our immigration policy, legislation and casework. Why are we here? We're here today... Oh, sorry?
I'd say go a bit closer to the mic. Perfect.
Question, why are we here? We're here today as a result of a survey that was carried out on the immigration services that we operate in the Isle of Man, and to give some reassurance about all the measures that we're putting in place to address the concerns that have been raised. If there's any questions, we're happy to take these, and if you'd like to put them through Slido, Amy's going to monitor them and we'll address them at the end of the session. Okay, so from the feedback, there were a number of issues that were addressed and identified, so I'm hoping today that I can give you all some reassurance that we are addressing the feedback and looking to put in place all these measures to make your lives easier, and obviously ours as well. We're going to address clarity of information, turnaround times, customer service and digitalisation. So just to set the scene and give you some background on how an application is made. This is kind of like the lawful basis of it. The Immigration Act is extended to the Isle of Man, and then through that we create our own order, and there's been subsequent amendment orders and various things, but the most important thing that we can do is have our own immigration rules. And what we have done over the last few years is, with modifications, we can't totally change everything, but we can change an awful lot within those rules to introduce new routes to facilitate and grow our economy. And in 2018 we introduced the worker route, and that was a move away from the UK's Tier 2 migrant route. It is, I would say, quite different in that there's a lot of flexibility for the types of roles, salaries and jobs that are within that route. We've also introduced in 2020 a new business migrant route, which is start-up and innovator. Those routes again help grow our economy. We're currently working on some new routes and rules to help grow our economy, which is the new temporary route. That is hopefully going to be introduced in February 22. DFE currently are working on the policy with us about how and what that's going to look like. So we hope that is going to make a big difference to employers bringing in relatively quickly temporary workers to fill those gaps, especially in the hospitality industry. A little bit about the UK and the Isle of Man relationship in terms of entry clearance process. We get an awful lot of queries and questions asked, why can't we just take the application direct to the Isle of Man? And the reason for that is we don't have visa application centres around the world. We don't have these global offices. So because of our relationship with the UK and us being a Crown dependency, they facilitate the taking in of those applications. So that's the first point. They take those applications in and then they're referred to the Isle of Man. Depending on where they're submitted and which visa application centre determines how long that's going to take. However, when they are referred to the Isle of Man, that's when we can start to escalate our process in here. What we're looking at doing and building into our system is a portal for migrants and employers to have a look at where the applications are at, because currently you can't. It's a phone call into our office to chase up an application. So we're looking to see how we can extend that provision for yourselves as employers and migrants to see their application. So not only will they have a reference number to see where their entry clearance application is with the UK, they'll have one with us ourselves. Which is a facility we're hoping will start to ease the pressure of people wondering where it is in the system. The other, just to give you some indication of the numbers that we've dealt with from April to the 5th of November, and there's a whole mix of these applications which we've broken down. But to give a little bit of a background, prior to COVID, we had Brexit, and Brexit did change fundamentally a lot of the way that we deal with applications and who was eligible, not eligible to apply. So then we had COVID, which basically stopped and put a standstill to a lot of the application flow because the visa application centres around the world, one by one, started to close down. But then one by one, they've started to open up again, and we've seen flurries of applications. During COVID, we had to amend an awful lot of our legislation because we found that there were a lot of people here who were on visas with terms and conditions that, unfortunately, they found themselves out of those terms and conditions through either loss of jobs or a whole host. So we introduced new legislation to be able to facilitate and accommodate those people to do things that they can't normally do without that provision being there, which is like switching in country, being able to switch jobs, do a whole host of things. Anyway, from the 1st of April, as the visa application centres around the world have started to open, we've been, I wouldn't say inundated, but we've received applications that weren't whole applications. A lot of the clients had put part application in prior to COVID, then they'd been held, and then they tried to pick the applications back up. However, the UK systems, they were falling off after 6 months, so there was a whole host of things that we had to do back office to try and get the applications that were for the Isle of Man to the Isle of Man. So these numbers here are from 1st of April to 5th of November. Entry clearance, which is the applications done from overseas, 306. In country, 168. Certificate of employment, which you can have several of those depending on how many employments. EUSS, and there's our emails that we received and telephone calls. That is done by a small team, but what we have done over the last few months is review and try and work out where we need to prioritise, and the prioritisation is going to fall with the worker migrant route and the routes that help grow the local economy. So what we've put in place is now we've got it structured, so we have 2 senior caseworkers who are going to be dedicated to manage the accounts, and they have gone out to some employers at the moment, but they will be going out to more and working with support of Digital Isle of Man as well. We are going to be identifying who is going to have and look after which cohort of employers. Back office, there's 5 caseworkers. We've got 5 full-time and 1 part-time who are going to purely administer the applications to get them through as quickly as possible. And we've got a caseworker now who's going to manage the telephone and email flows and put in place a triage around the stakeholders. What we've found is that the telephone calls weren't getting answered because of the way the system is and the block-up, and customers weren't being told they were in a queue and then they were dialing off. All that's being looked at to be addressed. So we're currently training a lot of officers to give assurance that and address the inconsistency of approach, the different information that has been given out to customers, all those things that you would expect to be consistent from an office providing this service is all being reviewed to ensure the same message is given out, the same instructions, the same interpretation, and everything else. So, and furthermore, we're going to be reviewing a lot of the website content and guidance and flowcharts and various things. One thing with the website is we found, whilst we as officers who deal in it day in, day out, we think it's that, we say, oh, that's really easy, that anyone can understand that, but we're finding more and more that actually it's not as user-friendly as it could be. So we're going to be working with employers and migrants to actually say, what really happens, what is the better wording to make it more user-friendly, because there's a balance between the lawful bit of saying this is what you have to do to the user-friendly bit without losing that message that there is something mandatory in there, but it can be done. And that's what we need to do, is get those messages a bit more punchy and a bit more easier to understand, so people don't think, oh wow, if you want to go to the Isle of Man, you have to do all those things. It's not, we need to just tone that back a bit. With our guidance, there's been a request. We have officer guidance, and we have guidance that goes out to around all the rules and various bits and pieces. We're going to have a look at that as well, and maybe have 2 lots of guidance where we can introduce one and give it to employers, so employers can explain to potential employees this is what you need to do. So it's the same message, it's just delivered a little bit differently depending on who it's being delivered by and given to. So we're going to look at things like that. Flow charts, we're going to look at the flow charts and make them, again, easier to understand so people know where they are or what part of the process. And again, frequently asked questions, we're going to start back up with our FAQs, which we did have, and we had them on the website. So when people were asking the same question, we could load them up so people weren't hanging on the phone or writing in asking those questions. So we're going to bring and introduce that back. And one of the new things that we're going to be looking at is online in-country application forms. And we're going to start doing things where we can with that. We are going to look at the certificate of employment to start with, to see how we can get that done and make your lives a little bit easier as an employer to do that. And what we have committed to do with the Digital Isle of Man is provide updates, and we'll provide those updates through regular meetings with Digital Isle of Man, who can then cascade to the employers where we are with these things. So we're going to draw up a list, we're going to commit to doing these things, and we're going to give you updates. Thank you. So if there's any questions outside of that, or please feel free. Thank you.
So there are a couple of questions here. The first one, why can't applications just be posted to the Isle of Man? And why don't the Isle of Man have priority visas to speed up the Isle of Man part? The process that Annie mentioned of applications being made overseas but to visa application centres, we are highly dependent on the UK for that part. We can't have visa application centres for the Isle of Man all around the world. The applications have to be posted to the UK. The applicants enrol their biometrics to the UK Home Office, and the Home Office actually deliver those visas on our behalf. If those applications were posted to the Isle of Man, we have no ability to actually issue those visas across the globe. So that's kind of the reason. I hope that answers that question. The second one, why do we have to post confirmation of employments? Why can't they be emailed? Annie's just mentioned that we're looking at creating an online application process for that. But to do that, there are legislative changes that need to happen to the Electronic Transactions Act and the regulations that sit underneath that. The Immigration Service has fed back to the Department for the Department for Enterprise, who have been undertaking a consultation on that act. So we'll be waiting for any changes to that to enable us to create online applications. And that won't just be limited to COEs, that will be other application types that we'll be looking at in the future. And the hold-up is more often than not with UKVI. How, if at all, will that change with the improvements you have mentioned? It's a difficult question. As I've said before, we are highly dependent on the UK, and the application process times differ from application centre to application centre across the globe. So we are looking at trying to speed up that process. We are constantly in engagement with the Home Office, and we are looking at feeding directly into their systems. However, I'm sure you can all appreciate the Home Office are looking globally, and we are a tiny part of that application process. So whilst we speak to the Home Office on a regular basis, weekly, and we are looking at feeding directly into those systems. However, that is some time off. But we are looking to improve that process. But as Annie said, there is the ability for applicants to monitor their applications as they're being processed. So I hope that answers that question as well. Are there any other questions? Yes.
Thank you. We're bringing through Manx Internet Commerce, King Gaming, Champion Tech, 67 people through the ICT route. And just to go back, Annie, a couple of slides back, you mentioned about the caseworkers and the partnership. I was going to email you anyway. It's been phenomenal, the amount of support and partnership we've had over these last few weeks to help us make that transition seamless. And the team have been absolutely fantastic. I just wanted to give you that feedback. Well done.
That's lovely to hear. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll pass that back to the team. Thank you.